What's up everybody, Rob here. So in a previous video, I talked about Count Dante, the Crown Prince of Death, who was a little bit crazy and also had one of the wildest careers in martial arts history. Link to that video is in the description. Please check that out if you are so interested. Today I'm going to be talking about an actual legitimate martial arts legend. This is a very brief look at Mas Oyama, the founder of Kyokushin Karate and one of the most famous names in the martial arts world. And just so you know, this is a brief look at his life. I'm not going to be covering every aspect of everything he did. He had a very extensive life. Trying to keep this under 10 minutes. I'll probably fail. But in any case, not covering every single thing he did. Just more of a primer for beginners. Okay? Let's get down to it. So, Choi Yong-wei was born on July 27th, 1923 in what is now South Korea. When he was young, he was sent to live on a farm with his sister in Manchuria, and while there, he started his martial arts journey learning Chinese Kempo from a local farmer. At the age of 15, he would move to Japan and would join the Yamanashi Youth Air Force Academy and then be inducted into the Imperial Japanese Army. During this time, he would change his name to a Japanese one, Masutatsu Oyama, or as he would later be known, Mas Oyama, a legendary name in martial arts history. He would continue studying martial arts, learning judo and karate, earning his 4th dan in Shotokan karate, his 4th dan in judo, and his 7th dan in Goju Ryu karate. It was during this time that one of his instructors would encourage Oyama to devote himself to Budo, the Japanese way of the warrior, as a spiritual as well as a physical discipline. Since his life wasn't nearly like a martial arts movie enough, he did the most martial arts movie thing ever, and he lived as a quasi-hermit on the top of a mountain. He would journey to Mount Minobu and would train there, isolated from the distractions of the world. He would practice for 12 to 14 hours a day, spending his time jumping over rocks and bushes to develop explosive power in his legs. He would strike rocks and trees to strengthen his bones like a makeshift makiwara board, and he would run hill sprints up and down the mountainside for cardio and lift rocks and logs for strength training. And because this isn't, again, not nearly enough like a martial arts movie, he would spend his remaining time meditating and practicing forms and kata under freezing waterfalls in the middle of winter, because that is like the coolest thing ever. He would also spend his recovery time, such as it was, studying Buddhist philosophy texts as well as martial arts manuals. And he did this for 18 months straight, basically 7 days a week. He took very few, if any, rest days. Anyway, eventually, after 18 months, he would break his self-imposed exile and compete in the first All-Japan Karate Tournament in 1947, which he won because, well, of course he did. And he still didn't feel complete with his studies, so he went back to the top of the mountain and studied there for another year. So it was during this time that Oyama wanted to challenge himself even further and push himself to limits more than he had ever been challenged before. And mere mortal humans were beneath him, so he started fighting bulls. So, starting in 1950, he started participating in eventually what would become 52 bullfights, wrestling them with his considerable physical strength, and on at least 3 occasions, killing the bull with a strike from his hands. He also broke off the horns of 49 of them with a knife hand strike. Now, there's some people say that this is exaggerated. I'm simply reporting what is reported that he did. Some people say it did happen. Some say it didn't. Some say it's exaggerated. Now, he did absolutely wrestle the bulls. Absolutely, there's footage of that. Him actually striking one and knocking one out or taking a horn off with a... I have not seen that, but, make of that whatever you will. And just so you know, it wasn't completely smooth sailing for him because in 1957... one of the bulls actually did manage to gore him, and he would spend 6 months recovering bedridden in a hospital. So it wasn't entirely, a one-sided thing, apparently. Well, he also wanted to test himself against human opponents, and over the course of his career would fight against 270 opponents, or 270 matches, and many of his opponents he would drop them with a single punch or kick, earning him the coolest nickname ever, the God Hand. I mean, that's a cool name. I mean, the God Hand. I mean, that's just awesome. And since his life isn't like a martial arts movie enough, he would participate in 3 100-man kumites. And basically, a kumite, okay, let me explain this for a second. The word kumite, a lot of misconceptions about this. Let me just clarify. The name itself means grappling hands, But it basically means any kind of unscripted or unplanned fighting. Basically, it could mean anything from light sparring amongst martial artists who are training. It could be a full contact competition. It could be basically anything where there's not any kind of prearranged pattern of movements. Basically, like free-form fighting. It could be, it doesn't, like, it's not a death match. It's not Bloodsport or Frank Dukes. That's a whole different topic. Him and his lies. That's a whole different thing. But no, it's not like this like underground thing with like people dying left and right and center. It just means a fight. That's all it means. Don't overthink it. Any case, way this would work, these 100-man kumites would work is that he would fight an opponent, and then there'd be a resolution, which he would win because he's the god hand. And then he would fight the next guy, and then fight the next guy. He did this with 100 men in a row, and then he did this on 3 separate occasions. So again, and as I stated earlier, he would more often than not, with his incredible power and skill, he would drop his opponents with one strike. Most of his fights lasted less than 3 minutes. He would eventually become the living embodiment of the samurai concept of, and I'm going to mispronounce this, I do apologize in advance, the concept of ichi geki hisatsu. Basically, it means one strike, certain death. A very samurai concept. Again, I apologize for the mispronunciations. Anyway, it was during this time that he would open his first dojo. At first, it was an open field in 1953, before moving to a more permanent location in 1956. It was here that his students would learn how to fight. They would not simply go through forms or pre-choreographed movements, but they would be actually training to be as dangerous and deadly as possible. And so full contact was commonplace, and it would not be uncommon for injuries to occur almost on a daily basis and people to need hospitalization or significant time to recover. And apparently, it had a high attrition rate of about 90%. About 90% of people who tried to show up would end up quitting sometime thereafter because they couldn't handle the incredibly high amounts of, getting punched and kicked by a guy named the God Hand. This is not point sparring, and whenever they did do sparring, it wouldn't be a matter of like perfect form. It basically, you would keep going until somebody gave up. This is, again, incredibly brutal with a very high attrition rate, and there were still hundreds of students, and after a few years, there were hundreds, if not pushing on over 1,000 students. Oyama would incorporate other techniques from arts outside of karate, which included grappling and ground fighting. Again, he had experience in judo, and jiu-jitsu would be used as well. This is Japanese jiu-jitsu, not Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They are very, very similar, but, not quite the same. And this ground fighting and grappling was as commonplace as the karate's striking. And so this was a full contact grappling and striking art, which would later be known or would be called by Oyama Kyokushin, which means ultimate truth. Basically, he wanted to get to the purity of fighting, the ability to fight, not necessarily being bound up by a specific tradition. Well, anyway, Oyama would travel around the world giving demonstrations of Kyokushin Karate, and over the years, his Kyokushin schools would be established in 120 countries and have over 10 million members as one of, if not the largest martial arts organizations in the world. And he would continue to train regularly, even in his later years, even after suffering from the effects of osteoarthritis. Just going to say that, like, slamming your bones repeatedly into rocks and trees, it's not good on your joints, especially not long term. So, be very careful if you decide to do that sort of thing. Anyway, even with these complications from his career, he would continue to train. Unfortunately, he would pass away in 1994 at the age of 70, succumbing to lung cancer. During the course of his life, he would write over 80 books, many of which have been translated into many other languages, including English. And he would also inspire a manga and an anime about his life, which would later, of course, be turned into a live-action movie. And most importantly, he would inspire several fictional characters, such as many characters in Baki the Grappler, the Pokemon Salk, and most significantly, the Street Fighter character named Ryu. Yeah, that Ryu is basically based on Mas Oyama, which is totally freaking awesome. Anyway, that is just a brief look at the life and career of one of the most legendary martial artists in history, and I just thought it was interesting and entertaining, something a little different than the Crown Prince of Death. somebody who's actually a legit fighter. So, yeah, not a huge, not covering, like I said, not covering every detail of his life. Just thought it'd be a fun thing to share with all of you guys. Anyway, that is it for this video. Please hit the like and subscribe button. More videos will be coming out whenever I bother to get around to it. Have a good day, or don't have a good day. Your adults have any kind of day you want. See you all later.